start with the rarest achievement in European football, because it removes the favourite before we even begin. How often does a club actually win this trophy 3 years in a row? Real Madrid won the first 5 European Cups from 1956 to 1960, back when the competition was a handful of clubs, a plane ticket and Alfredo Di Stefano refusing to get tired. Ajax won 3 straight from 1971 to 1973, with Cruyff and a system nobody else had bothered to invent yet. Bayern Munich took the next 3, from 1974 to 1976, largely by refusing to lose games they were losing. And then the wall went up, 40 years. Not because the great sides stopped existing, but because the competition started eating them. Every three-peat attempt runs into the same 3 things. A squad that is 1 season older than it was, a continent that has spent 9 months studying your patterns, and a group of players who have already achieved the thing they built their careers around, being asked to do it again in October, in the rain, against a Czech side who would happily die for a point. Milan could not do it, Barcelona could not do it, Manchester United could not do it. Real Madrid finally broke through in 2016, 2017 and 2018, and even they needed a penalty shootout, a Gareth Bale overhead kick, and a Liverpool goalkeeper having the single worst evening of his professional life. 4 three-peats in 71 seasons of this competition. Exactly one of them since 1976. That is the base rate. That is the wall. Every year somebody explains why this squad is different, and every year the fixture list explains why it is not. Now look at Paris Saint-Germain. They won it in 2025, dismantling Inter 5-0 in Munich. They won it again in 2026, beating Arsenal on penalties in Budapest, the first club to retain it since Real Madrid nearly a decade earlier. They have Luis Enrique. They have Ousmane Dembele, who won the 2025 Ballon d'Or. They have Vitinha, Kvaratskhelia, Hakimi and Nuno Mendes, 5 of whom finished in the top 10 of that same vote. They beat Liverpool 4-0 on aggregate and Bayern over 2 legs in the same season. On talent alone, this is not a debate. They are also attempting the 5th three-peat in the history of European football. Their squad is not the problem. Their manager is not the problem. 70 years of evidence is the problem. So Criterion 1 eliminates the best team in Europe, which sounds like lunacy until you remember what happened to Ajax, to Milan, to Barcelona and to every other side that walked into September believing the trophy had their name on it. 4 clubs have ever done it. Paris are not going to be the 5th. Which leaves the field wide open and led me straight into a rule I was completely certain about. It fell apart in about 20 minutes. When I ran this exercise on the Premier League, one criterion did most of the heavy lifting. Managers need time. First season managers do not win titles. I assumed Europe would behave the same way. Europe found that very funny. Hansi Flick took over Bayern Munich in November 2019 as a caretaker nobody had campaigned for. He won the Champions League in his first season and won every knockout tie by a distance. Thomas Tuchel arrived at Chelsea in January 2021, halfway through a campaign that had already collapsed on Frank Lampard. He won the whole thing in 5 months. Carlo Ancelotti walked back into Real Madrid in the summer of 2021 to manage a squad the entire continent had written off as too old. He won it in year 1, mostly by standing very still while the Bernabeu did unspeakable things to opposition defences. 3 consecutive winners, all of them in their first season at the club. The rule does not just bend in Europe, it shatters. And the reason is structural. The Premier League is 38 matches, and a manager's ideas get audited in the 90th minute of a wet Tuesday in Nottingham. The Champions League is 13. 13 games is short enough for a new voice, a hot striker and one goalkeeper in the form of his life to carry a club through. So the manager filter is dead on arrival. I tested it, it does not hold, and I am telling you that instead of quietly deleting it and hoping nobody checked. But something else does survive every era of this competition. Not the man in the technical area, the players, and specifically what those players remember about losing. Because Flick, Tuchel and Ancelotti all walked into dressing rooms, that had already been to the deep end of this tournament and knew exactly how cold the water was. Criterion 2 is the one that does the real killing, and it is embarrassingly simple. Champions League winners do not appear from nowhere. They have been in the room before. Since 2010, every single club that won this competition had already reached a semi-final in at least one of the 2 seasons before it. Every one. Inter, Barcelona, Bayern, Real Madrid, Liverpool, Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain. The pattern does not wobble. There are 2 exceptions in 16 years, and they are both Chelsea. 2012, with a caretaker and a squad that had no business being in Munich. 2021, with a manager appointed in January. Chelsea are the Leicester City of this rule, twice over, which is either a compliment or an accusation depending on how you feel about Chelsea. Everyone else obeyed it. The memory of a semi-final is worth more than any transfer window, because European teams are built in the 80th minute of a second leg, when the away end has gone silent and the stadium has not. You cannot buy that in July. You can only be exposed to it. So who was in the room? The 2025 semi-finalists were Paris Saint-Germain, Arsenal, Inter and Barcelona. The 2026 semi-finalists were Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid and Arsenal. That is the entire eligible field. 6 clubs, Real Madrid are out, and the manner of it matters. Arsenal knocked them out of the 2025 quarter-final. Bayern put 6 goals past them across 2 legs in 2026 and sent them home in chaos. 2 quarter-final exits in 2 years for the 15-time champions. Liverpool are out, beaten 4-0 on aggregate by Paris in a season that ended with Arne Slot getting sacked 2 years after winning the league. Manchester City are out in the first summer of the post-Guardiola era. Dortmund are out. Napoli parted with Antonio Conte a year after a Scudetto. Juventus and Milan missed Champions League football entirely, which for 2 clubs with a combined 9 European Cups is a sentence that should probably come with a warning. 5 clubs survive once you remove the holders: Arsenal, Barcelona, Bayern, Inter and Atletico Madrid. One of them was already finished by something that happened in a league table in May. Criterion 3 is domestic, and it is the newest of the 4. It has only been true for 5 years, but in those 5 years it has not missed once. Since 2022, every Champions League winner has also won their own domestic league in the same season. Real Madrid in 2022, Manchester City in 2023, Real Madrid again in 2024, Paris in 2025 and 2026, 5 for 5. This is a relatively new development, and it is a consequence of the format. 13 European nights stacked on top of a full domestic season is a squad depth problem before it is a tactical one. The clubs that can win their league without emptying the tank are the only clubs with anything left in April. Winning your own league is no longer a bonus stat on the poster. It is the proof of concept. So who cleared it? Arsenal won the Premier League for the first time in 22 years. Barcelona sealed a 29th La Liga title with 3 matches to spare at home against Real Madrid, which is the kind of detail that ages beautifully in a highlights package. Bayern won a 34th Bundesliga with 4 games left, scored 122 league goals and watched Harry Kane finish with 36 of them. Inter took a 21st Scudetto with 3 games in hand. Atletico Madrid finished 4th, and that is Atletico gone, which is genuinely cruel because the 2027 final is being played on the 5th of June at the Estadio Metropolitano. Their stadium, their pitch, their tunnel. Diego Simeone will get to organise the guest list for a party he is not invited to. 4 clubs left: Arsenal, Barcelona, Bayern, Inter. And to separate them, you have to go back to one night in Hungary. 61,035 people inside the Puskás Arena. Arsenal had conceded 6 goals in 14 matches on the way there, the meanest defence in the competition by a distance. They were 90 minutes from everything. 22 years without a league title ended. 20 years without a European final ended. One more result, and the whole rebuild becomes a monument. Kai Havertz scored inside 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Then Arsenal did what Arsenal had done all season. They dropped, they narrowed, they invited Paris to come and solve them. For 55 minutes, Paris could not. On the hour, Kvaratskhelia went down under Christian Mosquera. Dembele took the penalty and sent David Raya the wrong way. Bradley Barcola had the last kick of normal time to win it and put it wide. Extra time settled absolutely nothing. Then the shootout, which is the closest thing football has to a public execution that everybody agreed to attend. Raya saved from Nuno Mendes and Arsenal were level. Eberechi Eze stuttered in his run-up one time too many and missed. And Gabriel Magalhaes, who had been the best defender on the pitch for 120 minutes, stepped up last and put it over the crossbar and into the Budapest sky, where scientists assume it remains. Which brings us to criterion 4, and this is the one that actually answers the question. Milan lost the 1993 final to Marseille. They won the 1994 final, 4-0. Fabio Capello stayed. Bayern lost the 2012 final in their own stadium on penalties. They won 2013. Jupp Heynckes stayed. Liverpool lost the 2018 final to Real Madrid. They won 2019. Jurgen Klopp stayed. 3 times in the modern era a club has lost a Champions League final and come back to win it. 3 times out of 3, they kept the manager, they kept the spine, and they did not panic in the transfer window. Losing a final is not a wound if you can remember it accurately. The clubs that come back are the ones who treat the defeat as information. The clubs that never come back are the ones who treat it as a verdict. Sack the manager, sign 4 strangers in July, and spend the next decade wondering where the team went. Ask Atletico Madrid, who lost finals in 2014 and 2016 and have not seen one since. Arsenal kept Mikel Arteta. Arsenal kept the spine. And Arsenal are the only club left in this field that lost last year's final. So line the survivors up and look at them properly, because 3 of them fall apart the moment you ask a serious question. Barcelona have not reached a final since 2015, 11 years. They went out to Atletico in the 2026 quarter-final with a red card in each leg, which is not bad luck, that is a temperament. Lamine Yamal is going to win this competition at some point, not with a defence that keeps getting itself sent off. Bayern have not reached a final since 2020. They lost 6-4 on aggregate to Paris in the semi-final, which is a thrilling way to score 4 goals and still go home. Harry Kane scored 36 in the Bundesliga and it bought them exactly nothing in May. Inter were beaten 5-0 in the 2025 final, the heaviest defeat in the history of the fixture, and they were out before the semi-finals in 2026. Christian Chivu won a Scudetto and deserves enormous credit for it. He is also in his 2nd season and his forward line is not getting younger. Then Arsenal, back-to-back semi-finals, the only club besides Paris to manage it, a final, the best defensive record in Europe. Mikel Arteta in charge since December 2019, now the longest-serving manager in the Premier League and second only to Simeone across the Big 5 leagues. 9 Premier League clubs start this season with a brand new manager. That is a record in a competition that has existed since 1992. 9 dressing rooms learning a new pressing structure from scratch, while Arsenal walk out of the tunnel knowing exactly who they are. Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard, William Saliba, Gabriel and David Raya have now been through a title race they lost, a title race they won, 2 European semi-finals and a final. There is no experience left for them to acquire, there is only the trophy. 4 criteria: not chasing a three-peat, a semi-final inside the last 2 seasons, reigning champion of their own league, and a beaten finalist who kept the manager and the spine. Paris fail the first, Real Madrid, Liverpool and City fail the second, Atletico fail the third, Barcelona, Bayern and Inter fail the fourth. 1 club passes all 4. Arsenal will win the 2027 Champions League. On the 5th of June, at the Estadio Metropolitano in Madrid, in a stadium belonging to a club they beat to reach the last final, 12 months and 6 days after Gabriel put a penalty into orbit. The model said Spain would win the World Cup. Spain won the World Cup. The model says Arsenal. And the question is not whether Arsenal are good enough, because we watched them concede 6 goals in 14 European matches and lose a final to a shootout. The question is who is left in Europe to stop them, because right now the answer is a club with a first-season manager, or a club that has not reached a final in over a decade, or a club whose defence keeps getting itself sent off in Madrid. Tell me in the comments who you think breaks the model and subscribe, because in June we are going to find out together.